Hello YouTube! Since we're entering the cold months of the year, many of you guys are going to want to start bulking. Unfortunately, many of you are going to do it wrong. So, as someone who fell for the bulking meme in the past, let me offer you some pieces of advice to make sure that you have a successful bulk. First and foremost, let us establish what we mean by bulking. The goal of bulking is to gain muscle mass by increasing your caloric intake, hence putting the body in a more anabolic state. As you might know, the more calories you feed the body, the more of a chance you have that some of these calories are going to be used for muscle growth. The body is not necessarily super interested in making you bigger. What it wants is to keep you alive. So it feeds calories in priority to the organs, the vital organs, and then whatever is left over will be given to muscle so that they can actually grow. And since you are giving much more calories than needed to the system, well, it has everything it needs to fulfill vital functions, and therefore it has an easier time allocating the rest of the calories to muscle growth. So bulking on paper is an excellent idea, and in reality the only way to grow. If you don't bulk, aka if you don't enter a caloric surplus, you will not gain weight, and therefore your body size will not increase. This is simple logic. However, this does not mean that all these extra calories will go towards that. Some will, and the rest will be stored as fat reserves. It would be too beautiful if every single extra calorie you ate could go towards muscle growth. If that were the case, we would all eat as much as we could and we would all be gigantic. But that is not as simple. Your body can only utilize a fraction of that surplus, and the rest it will store because the body wants to keep you alive, and therefore whenever it gets a chance, it creates adipose tissue, aka fat. Your body thinks, okay, I have extra to work with and I can't use it for anything. So I'm going to put it on the side. That way, if you run out of food or resources, we will survive off of these reserves. But this is also a problem for anyone who wishes to bulk, because it means that bulking isn't as easy as just eating more. You know, you're a bodybuilder, you're into fitness, you want to get huge, and you have heard someone somewhere someday tell you that if you want to be big, you have to eat big. Eat big to get big. The issue is that this saying is complete and total bullshit. The only thing that will happen to you if you eat big is you'll get big, but you'll just supersize yourself and you'll get fat. Because the body does not possess the ability to use the calories to turn them into muscles. In reality, calories can't turn into muscles at all. They can be utilized to repair muscles, and muscles that repair themselves get bigger. The only thing that calories can create out of nothing is adipose tissue, aka fat cells. So get that idea out of your head. Just because you eat more does not mean you're going to get bigger via muscles. The training is going to make you bigger, and the surplus is what is going to aid the recovery process, meaning that you're going to be able to sustain that training, repeat that training, increase the stimulus, and then get bigger. This is how it functions. Every single successful bulks starts and ends in the gym. Whatever you do in the kitchen is the fuel. Of course, if you don't eat enough, you won't magically suck calories out of thin air, but that is the easy part. The training part should be the one that you actually focus on. So this is the first thing to actually keep in mind. You need to find out how many calories your body burns, then adjust to find the surplus needed. That surplus is what we're going to focus on. This is what you need to be able to, again, fuel your training. Anything above that will just be extra that will be turned into fat. Now, question. Are you guaranteed optimal muscle growth if you eat much more than you need? Yes, but you're also guaranteed to gain more fat. You know, it's a touchy question because some bros will tell you, well, I agree with what you say. It makes sense, of course, that if I eat too much, I'll just gain more fat. But I'm afraid that if I don't reach the magical threshold, I'm going to leave gains on the table. And no one wants that to happen. So some lifters will happily take the extra pounds of fat, thinking, well, I might gain more fat, but I'm also gaining more muscles at the same time. I'm not going to disagree with that because mathematically it makes sense that you are much more likely to get all of the gains possible if you eat more and you go above that surplus. But you have to keep in mind that it's going to come at a price, and that price is going to be more fat. And of course, you will always be able to lose the fat afterwards, but keep in mind that you're not getting much from extravagant surpluses. Meaning that the idea that you can double the amount of muscle gains if you eat 2000 calories above maintenance, or maybe just 1000 instead of 500, is a myth. That's not true. You get 95, maybe 98% of all of the gains you could make if you enter a sizable surplus. Anything above that sizable surplus is just going to turn to fat. We're going to discuss that later, but I think it's important that I put that in your head right now because this is what I preach on this channel. I'm 100% pro bulk. I went from 110 to 210. I gained 100 pounds. I didn't do that by just starving myself. I bulked, but I did it super slow and conservative. And actually, the years of my life where I made the least gains and I got the fattest were the years where I disregarded the advice I just gave you and thought to myself, okay, eat big to get big. If I eat more, my body magically is going to be able to adapt and it's going to make me bigger and give me more muscle growth. It doesn't work like that. The only thing that can make muscles grow is the training, not what you eat. And stuffing your face with extra calories doesn't make your training more stimulating. It doesn't function like this. We're going to get back to that idea, but I think it's something that especially young lifters who are going to get on their first bulk and who are being a little bit brainwashed by some of YouTube fitness worst content are going to want to follow. They're going to want to eat much more than they actually need. This is not needed. You will not gain more gains by doing that. The only thing you're going to get is extra fat. And the issue with that extra fat is that, unlike what you might think, it can severely impact your bulk. First and foremost, because eating that much will tire you. And it will tire you psychologically and physically. If you could just eat an extra bowl of rice or a snack or two a day, and that would be enough of a surplus to build muscle, why don't you just stick to that? Imagine if you triple that and now you have to eat an extra 1000 calories a day, which is like an extra 2 meals. Don't you think that this is going to tire you out? It's going to run down your system, but for what benefit? For what 1%, 2% extra gain? This is not needed. My best gains were made on a lean bulk where I was being fed by my parents and I would sneak a bowl of rice or I would sneak like a few pieces of roast beef in a day. I was so small that that small increase was all I needed to grow, and most of what I got from that was muscle. Was it slower? Yes, absolutely, but it was also quality mass. I might not have gained 100 pounds in a year, I might have gained only 10 or 15 pounds, but these were good 15 pounds that I never had to lose afterwards. If your bulks and cuts are like this, and they're massive weight gains and weight cuts, you understand that at the end of your journey, the guy that did this ended up at the same point because you did this, but you're still here at the end. What did you gain? Well, not much, but what you had to pay for was the mental price and the physical price of having to eat that much. But it's not just that, because as anyone who has eaten that much can tell you, this also is going to impact your ability to train. When you're lethargic all the time, when you stuff your face all the time, you might also start to despise training because now you are hyper fixating on the diet. And that is mistake numero uno. Regardless of if you're cutting or bulking, the muscle gain journey happens in the gym. Whatever you do around the gym is to fuel your ability to be effective in the gym and then to use what you did in the gym to recover and to get gains from it. If you become the type of dude who thinks, okay, that bulk is my life and this is the most important thing I have to do to gain muscle, the only thing you're going to get is you're going to lose sight of your training and you are going to get fat because the extra calories you consume during the bulk are there to help build muscle. But if you're not putting in the work to build the muscle, you're just eating extra calories for the sake of eating extra calories. So you're not actually a lifter, you are just turning into someone who is going to be overweight at the end of the day. If you bulk, it should always coincide with an increase in work volume. That should be a given. You give your body more fuel and more energy. For what? To be able to be more active in the gym. To do what? To damage muscle fibers or to whatever you think happens to muscle fibers when you tire them out, you put tension on them, and you force them to adapt and to grow. Then you eat slightly more and you repeat the process with slightly more stimulus. This is a balanced approach to bulking. I love sumo wrestling, and there was a retired sumo who explained that in his youth he would eat a ton and he would train a ton, and he was actually very healthy. But the older he got, the more quote unquote lazy he got, and the more he would eat. Why? Because if you're wrestling in the sumo ring, if you're very heavy, you can use that heaviness to your advantage. So what he thought is, okay, I don't want to train as much, so I'm just going to gain weight so as to be heavier, and that way I'll still be competitive. But eventually what happened to his body is his body broke down because there was no balance on the body. The same will happen to a lifter who thinks, okay, I want to get big, but I don't want to train as hard, so I'm just going to eat more because my body weight is going to increase. Or yes, it will, but it will not be with muscle. So if the bulk goes up and the calories go up, the volume and the workload and the intensity also has to go up. If it doesn't, again, you are not building the type of tissue that you think you are building. And to touch back again on the effect of diet on training, if your diet makes you lethargic or doesn't coincide with an increase in stimulus, you are likely to also end up fat. This is a lesson that sadly many people have had to actually realize by themselves, one that I realized by myself as well. Keep in mind that your body cannot immediately use massive increases in calorie. The goal, therefore, should be to slowly build up to feed your workout until your bulk calories become your TDE. This is a logical continuation to what I just told you, one that once you understand makes a lot of sense. So we feed ourselves so as to be able to be more performant in the gym, to tire the muscle out more so that we can justify the calories we just ingested that then can be used to make the muscle recover. Then we go into the gym again, the muscle is stronger, more endurant, and repeat that process. What does it mean? It means that if you're bulking and you'll keep your calories stable, you'll reach a point, eventually one day, where the bulking amount of calories that you used to eat to gain weight is now your TDEE, meaning that it's what your body now needs to be at maintenance. What does this mean? It means that you have gained muscle, because now your muscles require so much energy to just be maintained in their base state that they require the amount of calories that you used to need when you had less muscle and were bulking. And if you get to that point, one, congratulations, you actually gain muscle. Two, this means that if now you want to push the ball even further, you are going to have to increase your calories even more. The issue is that many people never work like this. They increase calories and they never let their TDEE catch up. They don't even let their TDEE get even close because they keep increasing the calories. Why? What is the perceived benefit in that? Well, there is no perceived benefit, but it's because they did exactly what I told you not to do. They hyper-focused on the diet and they thought to themselves, okay, I want to gain weight, even if the weight is not quality weight, it's the goal of the bulk, right? I'm bulking, it's bulking season, I'm going to get big, 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 big. But they don't actually look at the fact that their body is not able to utilize what it's giving them. It's just storing every single one of these extra calories as fat, as adipose tissue, and it's completely defeating the purpose of the bulk. So keep in mind that while it is impossible, mark my words, impossible to gain muscle without getting some fat, we want to minimize fat gains as much as possible for that reason, to make sure that we are getting quality weight. This should be the goal of your bulk. You did not start bulking to get fat. But many people, especially the people who did not do their research before starting a bulk, will eventually get to the point where they will gain much more fat than they bargained for. Why? Because they have fallen for the bulking meme. Luckily for you, I'm here to explain exactly why that is and the pitfalls to actually avoid, because I fell for it myself as well. So how do we avoid it? Well, the answer is fairly simple. We need to stay conservative in how much we gain, as massive increases in body weight can give the illusion of progress. This is when we're going to start to talk about the psychology of it, because Surely you would tell me, if you never fell for the meme, well, a guy who is getting fat knows he's getting fat and he knows it's not muscle, so why does he continue? And why is it that some dudes are still stuck in the bulking meme 10 years after their first bulk? How is it that they never manage to actually break out? Well, it's because, as we'll come to understand, the bulking meme is very comfortable and it also comes with its perks. The perks being the fact that, for example, it's very fast and also it gives you the illusion of progress. What do I call the illusion of progress? Well, here you have an example. Let's say you bulk and you bulk aggressively and you gain 10 pounds in maybe 2 months. Okay, you gain your 10 pounds and you see that your bench goes up 20 pounds. What is your first instinct as someone who is doing their first bulk? You're going to think to yourself, okay, well, I clearly gained some strength on the bench, which must mean that I gained muscles, and therefore my bulk is a success. I'm doing what was needed. I'm getting bigger, I'm getting stronger, therefore my muscles are also getting bigger. The issue, and anyone who knows anything about lifting knows what I'm going to say right now, is that this increase might be caused by fat gains. And you probably didn't gain as much muscle as you think. Whereas if you took your time, you could have gained the same 10 pounds of body weight and gotten the same 20 pounds increase on your bench, but you would have gotten mostly muscle. How is that possible, you ask? Well, it's very simple. It's also simple math and logic. 10 pounds gained in 2 months is 5 pounds per month. That's hefty weight gain. Let's say you gained instead 10 pounds in 5-6 months. It's the same 10 pounds, you could say and retort, and I would tell you that you're correct, but it's not the same quality, because now there is a much higher chance that this is quality mass because you had a slower weight gain. So most likely the percentage of calories that went towards muscle growth and the percentage that went towards fat tissue gain is completely different. The ratio is skewed towards lean mass, meaning that this increase now makes a ton more sense. Good bulk versus bad bulk. And the result is the same. That's the issue with the bulking meme. In both cases, you gain 20 pounds on your bench. So in both cases, you could tell yourself, I got bigger, I gained muscle. But in one case, you're wrong, and in the other case, you are right. And this is why, when bulking, one should be looking at the mirror as often as the scale. You will scarcely hear that advice, but this is sound advice. It's counterintuitive. You could tell me, well, I'm trying to get bigger, bro. I need to look at the scale. Well, yes, but if you spend your life looking at the scale and you never look at what's in the mirror, you will lose sight of why you started the bulk in the first place. Wasn't it to look better, not just bigger? And therefore, how do you know if you look better? You look into the mirror, but that number on the scale is sure to hypnotize you and make you lose sight of why you started in the first place. That is the bulking meme. So make sure you follow that advice, because too many lifters think that it doesn't matter how fat they get since they'll just cut later. This is something you will hear a ton with people who gain way too much weight. But what they don't realize is that this mindset is the reason why their bulk isn't successful in the first place. They just think about gaining by relying on inaccurate metrics, aka strength gains, without keeping in mind that they started to gain muscle. Now, am I saying that strength progression is not an accurate metric of representation for muscle growth? Absolutely not. But the timeline matters. In the example I gave you previously, it was the timeline that made all of the difference. You could gain 50 pounds on your bench in maybe 3-4 months or within a year. Most likely, in the first case, you gained much more weight and therefore much more fat. If you cut down, you will find that you did not gain as much muscle as if you had actually taken your time. This is what I'm trying to impress on you. Strength progression is absolutely needed, and it's a valid metric of progression within the parameters of a bulk. But if you let the bulk in itself and the gaining of the weight and the number of the scale become your number one priority, soon enough, that number, that strength progression, means absolutely nothing, because you are starting to skew it with your immeasurable fat gains. And it's actually a tale as old as time, because I see that all the time. Dudes who gain a shit ton of fat get stronger because duh, you got so fat. And then they tell themselves, okay, this must be muscle, and once I cut, I will see the result of my hard work. You will see the result of jack shit because what you did is you just bettered your leverages. You turned your body into a more efficient spring, and you think that when you strip it down, you're going to look good underneath. The only thing you're going to find is that all of that strength that you build is going to now completely disappear in thin air. You will keep a minuscule amount of it. And that is when you, if you have a functioning brain and senses, realize that you fucked up. It happened to me once, and I realized, wow, this was all a meme. But some people never realize that. We're going to talk about them later. Some people actually get stuck in that meme forever. So make sure that you never become the lifter who starts bulking to get jacked, then begins relying on strength gains to assess muscle gains, and ends up focusing solely on PRs. Because before you know it, you're just some fat guy lifting heavy weights. And there are many cases, it's not just me. If I can cite some names of guys who actually told that story in the past, I can cite Omar Izov, I can cite Eugene Theo, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Both guys who got immensely fat, who damaged their health, just for the sake of chasing numbers, and then realized that they were all doing that for nothing because when they cut down, they were not as big as they expected, It's not a sign of lack of intelligence. It's just what happens to many young men who begin bulking because they're seeking something and then they get sucked into something completely different. As I told you, it happened to me. But the problem is that you can cling to that delusion because, again, as I told you, many of these people tell themselves that come summer they'll get shredded, but they never will because when you start digging into that fat, this is when you start opening your eyes and realize how much time you wasted. Again, many such stories of dudes who bulked up to like 220, then they start cutting and they think, okay, I will be shredded at 190, and they get to 190 and they're still fat. And they keep digging, 180 still fat, 170 still fat, and then they reach the 165s and they're like, Jesus Christ, all I built was fat. I'm just as muscular as I used to be before my bulk. I really wasted my time for absolutely nothing. I was like that too. And it took for me to realize that to now get to 210 at a solid body fat percentage with actual muscles. Or now I'm like, okay, I know where I'm standing. But when I was 240, I can tell you that I thought I was big and jacked. I cut down to 210 and I was like, okay, where is my muscles? Hi, where is my muscles? Well, muscle was missing in action because the 30 pounds I lost were 30 pounds of fat I gained just to get stronger. Because most of what I gained during bulking season was fat. This is not the point of bulking. The point of bulking is muscle gains. So let me give you a quick summary of what might happen to you so that you are actually warned. It starts like this. You're impatient to be big, so you eat a lot. You eat a lot, so your lifts go up. Your lifts go up, so you're gaining strength, which must mean in your head that you're getting muscles. So you eat more, because of course, more food is going to give you more muscle gains because it's going to make you stronger. That makes a ton of sense. You start looking like shit, of course, so you stop looking at the mirror and you only look at the scale, so you become obsessed with numbers. The numbers are going up, so everything is good in your wood. But if you actually did pay attention to the number, you will realize that your pound for pound strength didn't actually increase, meaning that all you did in reality was to get fatter. This is the bulking meme, which eventually leads to people becoming strength coppers, what I call strength coppers. And to prevent yourself from becoming one, here are some early signs that your bulk will fail or has failed. Number one, your goal is to look big in clothes. I've heard that a million times. For some reason, it is an obsession nowadays. It's the I want to be shredded on the beach bra versus the I want to look big in clothes. And the two camps are delusional. The first one because usually they weigh 140 and they're not impressive at all. They only focus on abs and they never actually build muscle. The other camp because they have this weird obsession again about looking big wearing layers, which means that you're going to most likely bulk way too high to have that fat layer around your muscles. So you're going to look half decent in clothes and big, of course, but Obese people also look big in clothes, and it doesn't do them much benefit, or it doesn't really help them in their endeavors in life. And I think that this comes from PD users. Because the only people that really look massive in clothes are guys on PEDs, because they have 30, 40, 50 pounds of lean mass on naturals. So of course they look completely insane wearing clothes. And this has led some naturals trying to replicate that visual by wearing very tight t-shirts, which I don't understand. Personally, I wear XL or double XL all the time because it's comfortable when you're big to actually have clothes that fit you properly. Wearing smalls or like mediums just to be able to show that you're big because it's really tight to your skin is in a sense already a bit strange, but it would be even stranger if your goal was to be able to fill out something like an XL or double XL, because it's not going to happen unless, again, you get uncomfortably fat, which is not the point. If you are big in clothes but you can't stand your reflection in the mirror, what exactly is the point? Is it just to be able to impress people outside? Again, why? To be able to look like PD users? Most naturals will look good shirtless and semi-decent in clothes unless they wear something very revealing. I think that you have to make your peace with that and not, again, try to match standards that we are simply not able to. Number 2, use strength numbers to explain why your bulk was a success, but refuse to consider pound for pound strength. I've seen that one a million times. It's the guy who brags about being able to bench 3 plates, and then you ask him how much he weighs, and he says 250, and he doesn't compute in his head that this means that the lift actually sucks. Like, I benched 335 at 230. That's not impressive, guys. It's just being fat. You gain so much weight that you now move a lot more weight than you would if you were not carrying all that fat. And that also loops back to strength being misused as a metric of muscle gain. You see, if you gain 20 pounds on your bench and you only gain like 5 pounds of body weight, I would tell you that most likely, yeah, you gain some muscle, that's great. But if you gain 20 pounds and you are putting 20 pounds on your bench, nothing happened. You did not gain any muscle, and I would also argue that you didn't gain any strength. Your absolute strength went up, but for muscle building, absolute strength is a useless metric. What matters is pound for pound strength. So don't hide yourself behind your numbers. Show me what you look like, and then we can see if your numbers are actually impressive. Keep in mind, this is all about bodybuilding. I'm not talking about bulking. In order to gain strength, strength is only a way to gain muscle in my wood. Number 3, you cope with your shitty physique by saying you're bigger than the other guy. I've seen this one also a million times, and I used to be like this too. When I was 240, I looked like total garbage, but I told myself, well, maybe I look like garbage, but I'm bigger than this guy. And the issue is that this is just an excuse. This is what people tell themselves when they don't actually have a way to compare to others positively. So you try to resort to the one thing that you have. But it's not something that you should be proud of, that you now got so fat that you are bigger than the other guy. Obese people are also bigger than you. Some guy who's 500 pounds and eats at McDonald's every day is bigger than you. Does it mean that he looks better than you? Always remember that the goal of bodybuilding is to build a statue, not to see how high you can pile shit up. You might be bigger, but you also look like a pile of turds, and therefore you have failed your bulk miserably. Number 4, you decided on a weight objective before starting the bulk. I made that mistake. Please do not make that mistake, because most likely whatever number you're going to select is unrealistic. Just like I told you that many dudes bulk way too high and then they try to cut and they realize that they had much more fat than they thought. This also applies to selecting a number. You're going to think, okay, I'm 170, I want to bulk up to 200. It's a nice round number. Yeah, but it's also 30 pounds, asshole. Do you really think you're going to be able to make quality mass? Unless you give yourself 10 years, you're most likely going to look at that number and think, okay, 6 months to bulk, I have to be 200. And guess what you're going to do? You're going to start eating way too much, because the only way to meet that goal is going to eat way too much, meaning that most of those pounds are going to be fat. So instead of saying, okay, this bulking season, I'm giving myself a year or something, and I want to gain 10 pounds, and of the 10 pounds, you get 7 pounds of muscles, random numbers. No, you'd say 30 pounds, and of the 30 pounds, 28 or 27 are going to be fat. What did you gain? Except fat. Absolutely nothing. So please, never set a number before you're starting the bulk, because if you do that, you sabotage the bulk to start with. Start with no numbers. Again, take that into account. I made that mistake. I was 180 and I think I told myself, oh yeah, I want to be 225 because it's 100 kilos. Good idea. Let's gain 40 pounds as quickly as possible. What happened? I got fat and then I cut down and I realized most of it was not muscle. So do not make that mistake. And then number 5, and the one that makes the most sense, you're not happy in your body anymore. What is the point, again, in bulking and hating the way you look? For some people, apparently, it's a prerequisite. Like, if you don't want to puke when you look at yourself in the mirror, then this must mean that you're not eating enough. That's nonsense, guys. It's just going to sabotage your mental health. Take your time. The goal is to build muscle and it's to feel good. It's to be happy. It's to like what you see and the reflection that you see. The reflection will get bigger. With patience, it's going to take some time, but it's much better than just getting bigger and then not liking what you see and having to cut to be able to like what you see, but eventually wanting to bulk again and repeating the same mistake times and times again. And this is why, by the way, I advocate for a distinction between lean bulks and what some people call a giga bulk or a dirty bulk. I know that some people on this platform, for some reason, do not like gradations. They don't like distinctions. For them, a bulk is a bulk. That is bullshit. A bulk can be a good or a bad thing. It's a neutral term. And therefore, we have to assign certain terms to say whether the bulk is going to be quality or not. So a lean bulk or a slow bulk, in my opinion, is most of the time going to be a quality bulk, and a dirty bulk or a fast bulk is most of the time going to be a bad bulk. Why? Because you're going to gain mostly fat as opposed to lean mass. Not all weight gain is born equal, and in the world of bodybuilding, a slow and conservative increase always beats a rush. But there are 3 exceptions. 3 exceptions to that rule. The first one being that for some people, gaining weight, like weight in general, regardless if it's fat or muscle, is going to be beneficial because it boosts general strength. And I actually have a good example. We have a good example of that on this platform, someone who is part of the community, and that is Alpha Destiny. Alpha Destiny is someone who loves to bulk, meaning that once a year he's going to gain a lot of weight fast. He knows it's mostly not muscle, but he doesn't care because he is performance oriented. He loves general strength. And what is a good way to boost general strength? It's to gain weight. Look at the example I gave you. Yeah, it's possible to gain a ton of weight on your bench very fast. Does it mean that you're building muscle? Most likely no, not as much as you would think. You could gain 100 pounds on your bench, and that would not mean that you gained 100 pounds of equivalent in terms of like chest muscles, but you still gained 100 pounds on your bench. So if you manage to actually gain enough weight to get there without getting fat or not liking what you want, what you see, then you won. And that's something that Alpha Destiny has done in the past, as long as you keep track of past numbers. He, in his case, always looked back at what he used to be able to lift. When he bulks, he looks at what he can lift now, and he says, okay, I increase my numbers by X. So there's actual progression going. He's not just yo-yoing back and forth. This is what must be done if you are a performance-oriented lifter and you want to apply that type of bulk. So to use the example I offered to you guys previously, I told you that gaining 10 pounds of body weight and adding 20 pounds to your bench didn't guarantee muscle growth. But if you have past data and you go through that bulk and then you lose those 10 pounds of body weight and you realize that now you're 10 pounds stronger on the bench that you used to be when you were at that body weight, this is the guarantee that you got stronger, yes, but also that the strength you gain is most likely correlated with muscle gains. Then we have the second category of people who are going to be able to gain more weight. And it is usually bodybuilders, people who are aesthetic oriented, who want to maximize anabolism and guarantee peak recovery. And an example that we have on the platform again is Geoff, Geoffrey Verity Schofield. He's also someone who loves his bulks. He gains a lot of weight and then he loses a lot of weight. I told you previously that this means that he's getting 100% of the gains he could get, but that if he had decided to gain slower, he would only lose a small amount of percent in terms of overall gains. That being said, his approach is to say that any amount of extra fat that will be added on the table can just be shed down afterwards, so it's not a problem. The second category of people is essentially what most people who bulk do. They bulk way too much and then they just cut down, but it doesn't work for them. And why doesn't it work for them? It's because they don't keep track of past measurements, they don't keep track of past numbers. Someone like GVS is going to look at how big his arms were before the bulk, he's going to bulk, look at how much his arm improved, then he's going to cut down and then look at his measurements again. If he sees that the measurement went up, what does it mean? It means that he gained muscle, so the bulk was a success. Many people, and I say many people, the majority of people do not do that. So they don't have that data that tells them whether or not what they did was successful, and so they have no idea if their bulk actually worked. The reason why I'm personally opposed to that strategy is because I think it's unnecessary for most people. As I explained in the opening of the video, I think that it breeds bad habits, it pushes people towards strength coping, but most importantly, it is hard. And why is it so hard? It is so hard because it forces you to pay attention to many more variables, and you also have the ability to look at data on a timeline. I don't want to insult your intelligence, but most lifters don't do that. Most people can't do that. Most people can't even program for themselves. So you can't expect them to be able to look at all of these numbers. And I think that a slow approach is so much easier because it's also much more instinctive. When you gain all of that fat, again, you have the illusion of progress, and it takes someone with a cold head, and I would even argue an analytical head, to be able to completely abstract all of that and only look at the raw hard facts. So if you are interested in that approach, most likely it's going to take much more work, but it absolutely is doable. This of course also hinges on your ability to ramp up training stimulus as you bulk, which as I said is also a variable that you have to add to your training and adapt to continuously, which most people are not able to do properly. They will attempt, they don't have the ability, and therefore they will fuck up. And then the third one, the last category of people who can gain extra weight and be fine with it, are extra skinny lifters or men with a fast metabolism who might spin their wheels on a small caloric increase. With a small surplus, your body is all over the place, so your TDEE sometimes increases, you consume that, and now you're left with nothing, so you lose weight, and you're like, what the fuck? Well, you have to slap on another layer of calories, my boy, and you have to eat more. For you, in your case, it's just needed at the end of the day. It's not like your body is going to turn that into fat, it's going to burn it immediately. So you're the type that can actually indulge in a large surplus because it will actually promote muscle gains. Someone like me, I eat an extra 300 calories, that's all I need, and I know that this is going to make my body weight go up. Someone like you, your body devours that, so you might have to double it so that you have a layer of cushioning and protection in case your body takes that for vital functions and then leaves you with nothing to build muscle. You give it double, so worst case scenario, the half is taken and you still have the other half to be able to build muscle with. And if the body decides to not take the first half, well, you build a tiny bit of fat that is not going to stay on your frame and could actually be like a fat reserve, a storage reserve for a day where you cannot eat as many calories. Now you have something to actually take care of you. So I also promote that type of more aggressive bulking strategies for men in your scenario. And I would also like to say that extra fat gained during that type of aggressive bulk can also be beneficial because at the end of the day, you're skinny. Muscle will increase and better the way you look, absolutely. But fat gain is not going to hurt because in reality, anything we can put on your frame is going to be welcome. Remember that fat gains along muscle gains is inevitable and in some cases not a bad thing, especially if you are someone who is very small. It only becomes an issue if the ratio of adipose tissue versus lean mass is completely unbalanced, in which case you might end up being skinny fat, and that is of course not something that we want. So you also have to keep an eye on the way your body reacts, aka look into the mirror. And with that, you have all of the information needed to pull off a successful bulk. I did not make this video to discourage you from bulking. If you want to get big, you're going to have to gain weight. There is no way around that. However, there is a right way and a wrong way to proceed, and seeing how easy it is to get lost in the I'm getting stronger, therefore I'm getting muscle mindset, I thought it was necessary to warn you about the bulking meme, as losing sight of size for strength is a very real possibility that is guaranteed to sabotage your bulk and set you back big time in your quest of building a bigger and more aesthetic body. And since strength gains and bulking phases are both cyclical, it can be very easy to get hypnotized by the rhythm of quotes and bulks cycles. Something that I also witnessed on this platform. You have dudes who every winter gain 20 pounds, every summer cut 20 pounds. Their strength never goes anywhere, their performance never goes anywhere. It's the same training all the time. And you look at them and you're like, all right, have you realized that you are stuck in limbo? Did you realize that you are now in the training purgatory of bulking and cutting cycles? But the issue is that usually these people don't actually realize that, or they are delusional enough that they pretend to not realize it because they are comforted by their growing strength numbers when they bulk, which gives them the illusion of progression, but is in reality just moving back and forth like the sea on the beach, never really progressing or regressing, but just stagnating forever like their physique. I do not want you to become one of these people, because I have noticed that once you get caught in bulking and cutting cycles, it is really hard to actually separate yourself from it, because again, it's comfortable, it's a routine, and at the end of the day, you feel like you're doing something because I'm getting bigger and stronger, then I'm getting shredded, so I must be doing something right. Wrong. You are actually misusing bulks, and you are just padding your body with fat that you then lose for summer, and then you re-add the same fat. This is not natural bodybuilding, it's just weight gain, I guess, but that's not the point. Keep in mind that you will always be able to lose the fat, but what you might not be able to lose are the habits that you'll have ingrained on the way when you got fat. And these habits are the reason why most likely the amount of muscle you should have built was not built, and sadly this amount you failed to build following these bad habits will never be recovered. So don't fool yourself, don't fall for the bulking meme. And I'm going to leave you with that. Best of luck for your bulk this season, my brothers. I am bulking myself. I'm going to take it very slowly, and I hope that you also espouse a conservative approach. And if you don't, I hope that you keep in mind everything I shared with you today. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.